When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret? With Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/try to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/try.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is Saturday. Hope everybody's having a great Saturday. We hope to make it even better for you from now until noon. It's that time of year. We just might talk a lot of football on the eve of the Vikings kicking things off.
We should do that.
We should do that. That sounds like a good plan. And there have been a lot of kickoffs already. You had high school football last night on these airwaves.
I did. We had Esco and Proctor, and we saw a lot of talent on the field. Esco's quarterback, he can play. We were Tim Roweeder did the play-by-play, and Tim and I were talking that if he was 5 inches taller, that kid's a Division I quarterback. He runs, he sees the field. He's got that quarterback swagger, not just confident that he's going to be able to play. You could see it. He runs wonderfully. And I was surprised at how good of a ball he throws. Like, he threw a couple touchdowns to a streaking receiver right in the hands. And, we got to see him. We saw running backs, defensive ends that really can play on that Esco team. East must have caught them on a really rough night.
Well, it's hard to say because I was at Duluth East last night, and Duluth East does look pretty good. Now, they beat Hibbing last night by a final of 36-0, so the Hounds are 2-0. Esco got a victory. You mentioned they're 1-1. Proctor fell 0-2. The Hawks are 2-0. Hermantown won again last night. They beat Cloquet. Denfeld with a big win at Grand Rapids.
Yeah, that's the team this year, right? I mean, we were surprised 2 years ago. We were kind of impressed last year. I mean, are we going to be wowed this year by Denfeld? I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Zags told us Rapids is a team to be careful of because they have the most numbers. And for Denfeld to go there and win.
And win convincingly, by the way, 49-28 last night.
Yep,
so
that's good stuff for Eric. Eric and his team have gone through some just decades of not being good. They kind of do this, right? They're due of this type of record and type of team. Eric and his staff is due for. How about that?
Absolutely. But by the way, North Branch, I know they're probably not listening because it's a little bit outside our radius. I think the AM signal might reach that far, but North Branch has won that section in 7-4A the last couple of years, and there is a good one next week because Hermantown visits North Branch. My eyes will be on that one, partly because I'll be done with football broadcasting by Friday because I've got a game Thursday night. You just mentioned Denfeld, their home opener against Pine City. I'll have that one.
Yeah, that should be fun. Like, it'll be a real interesting bit for Denfeld because now one thing we don't know is how they handle success, right? And so let's see them run off a bunch of wins. That'd be cool. That Hermantown game is going to be something because that Hermantown team you and I saw, and then the one that rolled last night. I mean, they're big and they're fast. Like, those two skills, those two specific abilities by a football team is pretty good.
I was going to say, to have them at the high school level, that makes you pretty tough to beat. So we'll see what happens next week. You'll have Duluth East visiting Cloquet, the home opener I mentioned for Denfeld. Again, that'll be Thursday, and it'll be on these airwaves when they take on Pine City at 6 o'clock. And then Hermantown is at North Branch. So next week, some pretty good matchups. Talking a lot of football already to start the show. Like we said, we might be talking football for the majority of the show. I know it's not technically fall for 2 more weeks, but the feeling in the air coming in here today and with all the football being played, I love summer, but it's fall.
Yeah, this is the best time of year for me. I mean, when you're looking 70 in the eyes as your high and your low is going to be in the 50s, like that's Dave's wheelhouse right there. Those are his temperatures. And so, yeah, the fall is great. And then one day it gets to, 20 degrees and we quit thinking about fall.
Well, I'll tell you this. I didn't realize because looks can be deceiving and the sun is certainly out today and I'm in short sleeves. You got to love what I'm wearing. Radio's not a visual medium, but I got a Gophers polo on today.
One that we've seen PJ Fleck in. If you had big sunglasses on, you might look like
PJ Fleck. When I got to your car, I did. And you said, hey, you got a pretty good likeness going on. But that was more of a know your audience wardrobe selection by me today. I like the phrase know your audience. I've been using it a lot lately. I even used it in a text message last night. But this one is for you because I figured a couple things. You're not going to be here next week. So I wanted to, send you off on a good note. You're the biggest Gopher fan that I know, and this is one of the few weeks that I do feel like the Gophers will win a football game today.
Man, it's tough to say that. Although, as ridiculous as their offensive play calling was against North Carolina, they were still right there with a chance to win, and it was just not a great kick. And the play calling to get to that point wasn't great. But the fact that they stuck around, I said this with Tim last night on the show, on the game. I said, there's a lot of people out there calling for PJ's head. And those people don't remember 25 years ago when if we got a win, we were like, hey, we got Indiana this week. We have a shot.
But I look at it, and maybe it's a maroon and gold thing, because you look at it kind of the way you look at Denfeld. Yes, you've taken a program off the mat and back into relevance. But now when the goals escalate, can you go there with them?
I agree. And we talked about that as well. Dabo Sweeney is one in Clemson. I know they're having a rough year this year by being the emperor of the team, not necessarily.
Can we say anybody's having a rough year yet? Unless you're Florida State. Isn't that the only team that's 0-2 already?
Yeah, but
is anybody having a rough year yet?
They've given up some points. Clemson's
not like they played a bad team in their first game.
But Clemson, you hear it like there's drums already out there. But he's led them to national champions by being the recruiting guy and being the face of the program and hiring good coordinators to run the offense and the defense.
And that's what PJ needs to do.
That's what PJ needs to do. They're not out-talented by teams now. They'll be out-talented by Ohio State and Michigan, but so is everybody else.
Right.
But they're not out-talented by pretty much any of the other teams in the big, now I don't know enough about Oregon or whatever, but the previous generation of the Big Ten, they're not really out-talented by anybody. And so PJ needs to be able to look in the mirror and say, what do we got to do? And it's get a different offensive coordinator.
That's probably step one. Step two, mea culpa by me. I started talking Gopher football, and I led Dave on a 4-minute soliloquy that went all over the place. So we'll tie it all back in.
Well, I've got a little allergy thing going on, so I'm liable to go all over the place today.
Yes, we'll keep an eye out for that today, and you keep an eye from running all over the studio here. You are dealing with some allergies today, but we hope the Gophers aren't allergic to winning, because last Thursday they didn't get it done. And the reason I brought up my polo initially was not just to make an ode to you because you won't be here next week, but hoping that the weather won't be a factor for the Gophers today, because it was monsoon season in Minneapolis a week ago. But again, we're talking about fall kind of being here and the weather kind of proving it. I said looks could be deceiving because the sun's certainly out today. And you know my theory, it's sun's out, guns out. But then my wife was getting ready to take the dogs for a walk this morning. And I looked at her and I said, Jen, why are you dressed like you're doing the Bear Grease? And she said, Brian, it's in the 40s. And so I asked our Alexa device, I said, what's the temperature? And sure enough, she said 47, good high of 68 today. But going out the door, I'm in shorts and a polo going, for a guy who loves fall, I'm sure not willing to let go of summer yet.
Yeah, no, I'm in shorts. But that's, again, why I like this temperature. But yeah, 40 degrees this morning. They're talking about frost in the next week or so. It's seasons are turning, Bri.
So with the seasons turning, we're going to too. If you love football, you're going to love this show. If you don't, Mom, please don't turn your radio off, because
Mom loves this show.
She loves this show, but she doesn't love football, because she'll give me, as you know, a very honest critique of every week. And this is about the time of year where you go, well, I enjoyed it, but too much football for me. I know that's going to come out at some point.
Nobody wears pinstripe uniforms in the NFL. There's your problem.
That is probably a problem, but we are consistent with bringing you good content no matter the sport. We're not able to do that without our great sponsors.
Absolutely. Last Monday we had a nice little fantasy football draft, and with some of our sponsors, starting out with Arola Architecture Studio. Ryan was there, and he got to talk a little bit about architecting studios. And
by the way, that was last Sunday, but yes, you were there.
Was it Sunday?
Yes.
I was putting it together with Labor Day because we were worried about that. Another one of our guests, Dave Hoops from Hoops Brewing, ABS Auto Solutions, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Assisted Living Locators. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, and the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Tavern on the Hill, in Two Harbors and in Proctor. And in Proctor, they have the event center as well. And those, my friend, are our fabulous list of sponsors.
Absolutely it is. We're so grateful for all of them. Some of the best businesses here in the North, and it's time to talk about the North. Now, normally on the Northland Sports page, we do very creative opening topics and try to have some fun with sports gone by and sports in the present. I hope it's creative because 99% of them come from me. I hope it's at least a little bit creative.
No, I agree.
But today
Mine are always convoluted.
Today is the exception. Today we're just going to go ahead and say, you know what? NFL season is underway. Great game Thursday. Great game last night. Hopefully great games tomorrow. We're just going to go ahead and talk some football. And it's time to preview the North, as in the NFC North.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I think that we should probably start with the team that played last night. Let's start with the Packers of Green Bay.
All right, I will happily start there because as a Minnesota sports fan, I know very little about rings. We don't do championships unless you're the Minnesota Lynx or twice with the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah.
But I do know this, Dave. The last place Green Bay Packers has a very nice ring to it, and that's what we're dealing with today.
It is 100%. I was telling you, one of the guys I follow has a standings that's up, and it's nice little zeros behind everybody, and get to Green Bay, and it's a nice little zero in this one that's the size of the Empire State Building. Green Bay is in every Minnesota Vikings fan in their head, and to see them 1-0
or 0-1,
and having we got a lot of grief given to us last year about losing our quarterback. Oh, this is what you get for not planning. Well, Love got hurt last night. Nobody wants to see Love hurt, right? But Malik Willis came in, and he looked great for the last 5 seconds of the game with a fumblerooski on an incomplete pass. So, your starting quarterback is hurt. I see you got really prepared for that. So with the Green Bay to start with, I wanted to ask you what you thought of Brazil as a football mecca.
Well, I think it's interesting because the NFL just loves to make money and loves to grow the game, and this did both of those things. It's an interesting place to have a game. We've done London a bunch. Mexico City's been done. Where else are you going to go kind of thing? I think Brazil would be a neat place to be. It sounded like the players enjoyed themselves as best they can. Yeah. There are obviously some controversial pieces to it too. Biggest controversy during the game last night seemed to be the field conditions. Packer fans last night, I listened to some of their postgame. Yes, I troll like that sometimes. But they were making a big deal out of it because of how it ended. And some people poo-pooed that in a hurry and said, guess what? Both teams played on the same field.
Yeah, that's true. I'll tell you what I did see from Green Bay, and I think they have an offense that's going to be
no question
pain to deal with.
I was going to say, we should start previewing this team personnel-wise.
Yeah.
Again, we don't know the Jordan Love future. It didn't look terrible by the end of the broadcast. At the end of the game, it was very concerning with the way he went down.
The other thing that really jumped off the page is our secondary is going to be good. When you see Alexander, and I love my
Jair Alexander. Love him, and to me, that's it. I disagree with this whole premise, but go ahead.
But Xavier McKinney, they got increases.
He's pretty strong.
Right,
yeah.
And so you've got the other cornerback and the other safety. They're both pretty good. So now you've got a spot that they used to be like, even a year or two ago. It had, Jair Alexander and Pray for Rain.
Right.
Now they have a competent secondary, which I think makes them more dangerous because their defensive line is pretty good. I think their linebackers are fine, but their defensive line is good and their secondary now is much better. The defense is going to be a problem, but the offense, those kids receivers ever figure it out, and I don't know if they ever will. That's a pretty good offense.
Well, that's the biggest thing, because will they figure it out or not? Because I love that, they like to say, well, none of us is wide receiver one. We all are. Fun theory. But at some point
you have four, you don't have one.
Right. At some point, somebody needs to take the reins and say, I'm going to be the go-to guy. Now, is that Reed? Is that Wicks? Is that Watson? Who is it? I don't know. If Jordan Love's not taking the snaps, is it anybody? Because, as you said, Vikings fans know all too well, different quarterback back there changes everything. You hit on some decent points with the defense. I don't agree with the secondary being all world. I think
I said much better.
It is
a problem.
It is much better, but let's say low bar for that. McKinney and Alexander are good. The rest of it back there, I'm not real sure of. Kenny Clark is a nice defensive lineman. Gary's a nice defensive lineman. He said the linebackers are fine. I think they're only even fine if Quay Walker can play out of his mind. And I'm not convinced that can happen because he was bad yesterday, I thought.
Oh, he had half a dozen, or he had 10, 11 tackles? Like, he played pretty well.
How much of the game did you see? You got to remember how far down the field those are taking place.
That's true.
The question really about last night is, how good is Philadelphia? Because I think we think that they're going to be a decent team, but, do they get elevated by taking care of Green Bay yesterday? Because it was in Brazil. Was it a home game for anybody? Schedule-wise, probably, but obviously not.
Well, and how much of a difference does Saquon make to that team? Like, he was really good last night.
Right.
And the defense, that defense was good last year. They just couldn't do anything offensively. And so, if they can figure their offense out, their division's not all that difficult. The Giants.
It's Dallas, and what are the Commanders doing? What are the Giants doing?
Yep, the Giants will be drafting, in the top 5 to get a quarterback if all plays out well. The Washington's is on a better path.
It's up and coming, but give them 2 years.
Yeah, and Dallas, who knows? They got a goofball head coach. Their defense coordinator is going to be great. They've had strife for money inside. You just don't know. Dallas could just decide it's everybody against us or against the world, or they could turn inwards and attack each other.
So back to Green Bay as we are previewing the NFC North.
Yes.
When you look at them, who's their most important non-quarterback? Because I wanted to talk about, the important pieces, and we hit on some names between Rashad Gary, Kenny Clark, Jair Alexander, Xavier McKinney, various pieces to that team that are big names in some big places. But realistically, if we broke down any team, North or beyond, and said who's their most important player, good luck not discussing the quarterback. So I want to purposely take quarterbacks off the table to make it a little more interesting. When you look at the Green Bay Packers, who's their most important non-quarterback? And then we'll close the book on Green Bay for this topic just by putting them in 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the North for your season prediction.
Well, I know this drives you nuts, and so I'm just going to mention and then move on. I think Jair Alexander is their most important player because he can cut the field in half. Now, I know that you don't agree with that. So let's move on to Josh Jacobs, because I think Josh Jacobs, his style of running in the NFC North, has a chance to be really effective. Like, he's not super flashy, but he will find a crease and run some people over. And, they had that in Dillon before he got hurt. Well, Jacobs is, a whole level above where Dillon is or was. And so I think he's the one. If he stays healthy, they'll be able to survive a little bit anyway with a quarterback injury. If he's not, the receivers, I know that they're okay. I know that they're young, and they could absolutely jump out of their skin. I don't see any of that in that receiver crew.
So your place for Green Bay, 1, 2, 3, or 4?
I'm going to say 2, but I'm going to say 2 with a huge caveat.
Right. If Jordan Love's injury is severe, like 2.5 to 3 to...
And if Caleb figures it out, like if he's the guy that should have been drafted number 1 and we get to see those talents, that Bears team has talent on the offense.
All right, so with that, we'll go to the Bears next, but I'll give my real quick most important non-quarterback for Green Bay. I'm going to do differently because I have to, just to make it better radio, but I know you were fully anticipating that I wouldn't agree with you. I actually agree with a lot of what you said, because especially if Jordan Love has some sort of severity to whatever happened last night, then it obviously becomes Josh Jacobs, because until Malik Willis figures it out, or whomever, if they go pick somebody else up, you're going to rely on a running game for obvious reasons. But I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to say the most important non-quarterback is going to end up being Rashad Gary, because I actually think your theory on Jair is pretty good. But if a quarterback has time and those linebackers aren't great, and you can throw to the opposite side of the field as Jair, you can make a living.
Yeah.
If you get a good pass rush, which I think their best source is Rashad Gary, Packer defense is different.
Yeah, that's true. And that, again, that if I consider this the defensive backs better, it gives a guy like Gary another half second to get to the quarterback, and that is a skill. The one guy we didn't mention, and I'm just going to mention it super quick, is the kicker, because they've gone through a dozen kickers of preseason, and now they've got a guy.
Right, they cut the other Carlson, they cut Greg the Leg, Greg Joseph.
And now they have a USFL kicker.
Who, by the way, missed one last night.
Yeah, so, I mean, they need some – they're not very unsimilar to where the Vikings were a few years ago. That kicker can cost them 4 or 5 games by just being a below-average NFL kicker.
Right. And I'm going to go ahead and put the Packers in second as well. Now, granted, if the Jordan Love injury news is severe, we could certainly change that. But to be fair, if any team, for the most part, loses QB1, you're going to change your outlook on them.
Yep. It's just we don't have to hear it. You know what I mean? Last year, we got the Packer fans were all over, oh, man, it sucks that Kirk is gone. You guys are really going to be bad.
Right. I'm not going to wish injury on anybody. I hope Jordan Love is fine. But there is part of me that went, oh, the team that's been incredibly blessed for about 3 decades with franchise-altering quarterbacks might have to deal with some adversity. Imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's bump to the Bears.
All right, so this is the team that everybody's talking about. You know, on paper, this is a heck of a roster. But there are also, as you know, some franchises that just can't get out of their own way. It's a little bit like when Aaron Rodgers signed with the Jets, or even back when Brett Favre did. We went, yeah, okay, but it's the Jets. They'll find a way to still be weirdly bad.
Yep.
Can the Bears shake that mantra? Because the Bears haven't been like the Lions up until, last year when they jumped off paper. The Bears haven't been terrible, but you've always kind of shrugged your shoulders at the Bears. Like they've had bad years, and then they've had 9-win years where they got into the playoffs, or 7 or 8-win years where they didn't make the playoffs, but they weren't awful. But when you think of the Bears, I still think you think of a negative stigma with the new group here. Is it shaken off?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So the Bears are going to come down to this. They haven't developed a quarterback besides how you think of Jay Cutler since Jim McMahon, right? They've had and
did they really develop Jim McMahon if you think about it? If you think of that Super Bowl team, Jim McMahon was the quarterback, but how big of a deal was he?
Yeah, he was a game manager who could pull some stuff out of his socks.
Right.
If you go before that, good luck.
Sid Luckman. You said good luck for a reason.
It's probably that. I mean, Bobby Douglas was, a running quarterback who was a different kind of quarterback. But
I'm thinking of the guys we grew up watching. You're thinking of Eric Kramer. Mm-hmm. They had Cordell for a spell, Cordell Stewart.
Yeah. It really is Jay Cutler, Sid Luckman, and then nothing.
A bunch of names you don't want to mention.
And Caleb needs to be the guy to take that over. Because if he does, like if he is that guy, they're the number 2 team in the conference. They have wide receiver depth. They have the rookie from Washington.
I was going to say, Adunze is going to be good. DJ Moore is going to be good. And I love Keenan Allen. Yeah. Keenan Allen in wide receiver terms might be 108 years old, but I love Keenan Allen.
And Cole Kmet can play tight end. I mean, their offensive line is young, but it's full of high draft picks.
And Lavelli Neal told us how good down the stretch last year that defense was. The problem was nobody noticed because they were battling for a high pick.
Yep, and Sweat's going to bring he's just a different animal on the defensive end. So if Caleb clicks, that's the second best team in the NFC.
All right.
North.
So I'm going to put them actually 4th. I'm going to put them at the bottom.
So you're saying Caleb won't click?
I don't think he's going to be all that and a bag of chips because I like to channel my 90s every time I get on these airwaves. I just don't think it's going to click right away. I'm not saying his career is going to be, headed south like a David Carr type of thing where, you are the number 1 pick and then you just got nowhere. I don't think it's going to be that. But it might be like a Bryce Young where that first year you went, oh, and then maybe you figure it out down the road. I just think there's too much hype.
I don't trust their coach either.
That's the other thing. And that's part of a franchise that can't get out of its own way. I'm not sure the leadership is who you want.
Yeah, the guy from IKEA, the Uberflus.
Right.
But defensively, they're
that sounds like a car I took home after the bar. I took an Uberflus.
Yes, exactly correct. Their defense is going to be okay. Their defense is going to be good enough. I don't think they're top 10 defense, but they're going to be good enough. And I know we overvalue quarterbacks, but in this situation, with Swift in the backfield, you've got wide receivers. Some are young, some are old. They're all talented. You got a tight end.
They've got a great mix.
Yes. So if Caleb is anything near what he's drummed up to be, that's a good football team. If he's not, that's just a bunch of veterans around trying to survive with a rookie quarterback.
Right. And I'm fully prepared to be wrong because, again, on paper, they look really good. All I think of is, do you remember when Daniel Snyder in Washington bought everybody?
Yes.
And on paper, they looked really good. And you put them all together and they were really bad. That's, I guess, what I'm hoping for. So there's some bias in that as a Viking fan. But you mentioned DeAndre Swift, and that's going to take me easily to my most important non-quarterback for the Bears. It has to be Swift. You look at this guy, and he hasn't been in the league very long, but he's been a big part of what will be his 3rd offense because he was in Detroit, and then he was in Philly, and now here he is with the Bears. And it's not exactly breaking news that any quarterback, period, but especially a rookie quarterback, can develop having a running game that's worth a darn. Is DeAndre Swift that guy or not? I think so, but there's got to be a reason why he keeps bouncing teams so early in his career. If he does something for this team where Caleb doesn't have to be it, it's a difference maker. If he doesn't, and Caleb's got to be it, I don't love the Bears' offensive line. We didn't mention them at all.
Well, I was just going to. I quick looked up the starter so I got the right name. Braxton Jones was a first-round pick last year, and his left tackle, it's a tough division to be a left tackle in. Trevon Jenkins, that's a guy that they drafted to be their left tackle 5 years ago.
Right.
He's a hothead, and they put him down to guard. Their center, Coleman Shelton, never heard of him. The right guard is our old friend, Nate Davis.
Right.
And he got washed out of here pretty fast. And then the rookie, Darnell Wright, is at the other tackle. Like, that's a young, and not all that talented.
Yep.
They look, actually, you know what they look like? They look like the Vikings offensive line from about 3 years ago when you had O'Neal and you liked Darisaw, and then you had the three guys in the middle. That's kind of what we're looking at here, too. And with a rookie quarterback, if he gets pressure up the middle, you remember the famous thing that Sam Darnold said when he was in the Jets, and that's I see ghosts.
Right.
That can happen to a rookie quarterback really fast.
All right, so real quick, who's your most important non-quarterback, and what place do you have him in? I'm just going the Bears are the Bears, and I put them fourth. I think I'm going to be wrong.
I'm going to go with their defensive tackles, Billings and Dexter. If there's no pressure from the front, there's no fear of pressure from that part, then you can double team Sweat, and that all of a sudden their defense is exposed. So I'm going to say the most important non-quarterback are those two guys.
All right, let's go to who we think is going to win the division. I think you think they might win the Super Bowl, and I can't believe we're saying this. What parallel universe is this? But let's go to the Detroit Lions. And newsflash, we may not cover the Vikings much here in segment 1 as part of the opening topic because guess what? We've got until noon to talk a lot about them today.
Yep.
So let's go to the Lions. I think we just generally think they're going to win this division just because it's the Motor City, and that motor's been revving up for a couple of years now. It's time to go full throttle.
And truthfully, they don't really have a weak point. Like, they have points that are less good.
It looks like
others.
It's their pass defense, but they tried to do some things to shore that up too.
Yep, they brought in guys, they drafted guys, but their defensive line is good. Their linebackers are good. Their linebackers are surprisingly deep. Like, they have 5 or 6 guys that could play at the NFL as starters. Their quarterback's good. Their offensive line is good. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown and a couple other guys at receiver.
I was going to say, when you got Laporta and you've got pass catchers coming out your ears, do we owe Jared Goff in general an apology?
Yes, we do. He had to find a spot.
Because it was just supposed to be a Sean McVay disciple, and you aren't going to be able to play anywhere else. And originally, when he got to Detroit and they didn't win until Cam Dantzler decided to camp out in the end zone so he could beat the Vikings, it looked like, well, this is Jared Goff, and that ceiling wasn't much. He's a pretty good quarterback. Now, is he top 10? Maybe. You might put him 9th or 10th.
He's
but
Kirk Cousins.
Is he good? He's probably a little better than Kirk, and I didn't used to think that.
Yeah.
Because Jared can extend plays. Yes.
I just think that the biggest problem the Bears have is the one we think they have. And that
the Lions?
is when you have, what did I say?
Bears.
Yes, the Lions.
Tigers, oh my.
The Lions' biggest issue, I still think, is having a rah-rah coach. If things go well, they're going to go really well because he's going to help push the boulder down the hill. But if things get turned around, the rah-rah stuff doesn't work, and we haven't seen that Dan Campbell is a guy that can rally the troops.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here because you just almost stole my thunder because the Lions' most important non-quarterback, although the Lions might be the team where their most important player maybe isn't their quarterback because Jared Goff is just good. But when you look at Gibbs, you look at Montgomery, you look at St. Brown, you look at Laporta, Aiden Hutchinson is a budding star getting after quarterbacks.
I was gonna say.
But my most important non-quarterback is Dan Campbell because we've talked about it with Duluth Denfeld and with Minnesota, and I'll throw the Lions in that same idea. Can you handle expectations properly? And will Dan Campbell things enough where he's going to screw something up in a big game, and that's what's going to happen like it did against San Francisco last year? Because fans will argue Dan Campbell is what makes the Lions who they are. Because he does roll the dice. He plays a little bit of Madden on a real field, and the players get after that, and it makes their identity fun. And, he's kind of, thumbing his nose at traditional football until you get in the big games with the teams that are perennially there. And then you Dan Campbell some things, and all of us that are by the book go, what is he doing week after week after week? And then finally in the postseason, we got to go, I told you can't do stuff like that.
And he really, I know the last one didn't work, but before that, their winning percentage, their success percentage on 4th and whatever was a little like the Vikings in 22, where they kept winning games they had no business winning. Campbell, there's no way
Campbell handed them one of those.
There's no way you should be, in the 80% success on 4th and whatever. And so, I think Campbell's could be a problem. But again, if they're winning, he's a plus. I think Aiden Hutchinson is the most important other player because he's had a good year. You know, he shows signs. He does more than just rush the passer. You've seen him drop in coverage and things. But he doesn't get home as much as you'd think. He puts pressure on the quarterback, but at that end, at that money, you got to start finishing things. So if he doesn't start finishing things, they're going to be able to do some stuff with him, other opposing teams.
All right, so we will talk about the Vikings for the rest of the show. We didn't cover them here, but let's go ahead and unveil where we have them in the standings. Here's my North: Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, in that order.
Detroit, I'm just going to say things click with Caleb. Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay without a quarterback, and the Vikings are going to be better, and they could surprise me, but I don't see them winning a lot this year.
The schedule could tell us a lot. Tomorrow could tell us a lot because they could get confidence starting 1-0, and then maybe that gauntlet doesn't look quite as imposing, but we'll see. Bumping out with Love Hurts. That was the quarterback matchup in Brazil last night, but now the question of the week is going to be, how bad is Love hurt? That could shake up the North as well.
Yep.
We'll shake it up with Dave Hoops. Stick around. We'll be right back. And we're back on the Northland Sports page. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook bumping in with a little Blueberry Hill because yesterday Hoops Brewing basically became Blueberry Hill. More on the new beer release from yesterday afternoon in just a moment with Dave Hoops. Dave Cook, first of all, Dave Hoops is one of our illustrious sponsors with Hoops Brewing. You've got a list of the others as well.
Absolutely, Brian. Start with the Blackwoods Group, including their locations in Proctor and in Two Harbors, Tavern on the Hill, and, of course, the flagship on London Road. Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Krause Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Assisted Living Locators, you can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. Kohler Hyundai and Kohler Toyota. You know, Aaron bought a car this week, and he made a point. He found one. He's been looking. He drove a while to go buy it, but it's a Hyundai, right?
Right.
And one of the things we talked about with the warranty that it still had on it, it's used. He needs to go shake hands and meet the guys in service at Kohler Hyundai, and that's one of the things we don't talk enough about when we talk about car dealers is their service, because you bring a car in and you expect things to be done right. And if you expect things to be done right and you own a Hyundai, there's only one place to go. Advantage Element Screen Printing, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, ABS Auto Solutions, also a place Aaron and I talked about to bring his car now to get it ready for winter.
And when you do, mention the show.
Absolutely. I wonder if I would think you'd still get the discount, right?
I would hope. You're one of the chiefs behind it.
If you mention the show, they do provide a discount. Arola Architecture Studio, and of course, we're talking to Dave Hoops Brewing.
Dave Hoops with Hoops Brewing. As I mentioned, as we say good morning to him, we bumped in with Blueberry Hill because it was a big release day, courtesy of Hoops Brewing and the folks at The Lift. Dave Hoops, happy Saturday. Tell us more about Blueberry Wheat, because I'm on my way down after the show this afternoon to try some out.
Well, good morning. Good morning, guys. It turned out just great. It was a very successful release, and the aroma is really something that catches people. You can smell it with the glass sitting in front of you. It just smells like harvesting like a big, huge blueberry patch. And then I equate it to like crushed wild blueberries with the flavor, and then it's really dry finish. So there's still a fair amount of beer flavor in this beer as opposed to being too sweet or too Kool-Aid-y, although it is sweet until the finish, which is dry. It's really good.
I am excited to try it. I'll be interested to see how I rank it because I know how much I like all of your fruit beers between peach and pear, raspberry wheat, and obviously cherry ale come Christmas time is in a league by itself. But speaking of ranking things, Dave Cook and I just did that for the NFC North in that first segment. I'm not sure if you caught it or not, but you had said last week you're taking the Vikings because that's what you do. How do you see the rest of the division shaking out?
Well, I enjoyed that segment. I think I'm going to take the Vikings because, anything can happen. But, I would go Detroit 2. And I think I did this last week. And then the Packers and then the Bears. I like your discourse on Caleb. I'm not really sold on him. I think Detroit's going to be really great. And if the Vikings don't succeed, they'll win the division. I don't know about the Super Bowl. But, yeah, I like that segment. And I have to take the Vikings because that's what I do.
And I do appreciate that. Speaking of what you do, part of what you do is watch a lot of football. And I know that there are some folks that love the sport. There's 3 of them on the air right now, and there are some folks that don't. I talked about my mom earlier, but I'll tell you this. If you're not a football fan or looking to try to become one, watching Thursday and Friday's games would be good reason because they both came down basically to the last play. What'd you think of the proverbial kickoff to the season? Because those were two dandies.
Outstanding. It's just that premier game on Thursday night, you couldn't ask for more. The Worthy situation, I know Dave's all excited about it, and he's not going to be week to week like that, but that was great to see the receivers that could really, last year they had 4 long touchdowns, the Chiefs, all year.
Right.
They had 2 on Tuesday. It was a great game, and the right team won. I was rooting for the Chiefs. Last night,
the right team won again. I don't like Philly either, but there's one team that I like a lot less.
Yeah, 100%. And I just love it that they started 0-1. That's just fine with me. I hope Love is not hurt, obviously, and it doesn't maybe appear like it, but you guys said it well. We'll find out. But that was a good game, and Hurts is just dangerous, and he didn't really have a good game, with turnovers and such. But it was a really great game, and I thought Brazil really showed well. It was fun. The place was packed. I think that was a cool move by the league. And I think the Vikes play in London. You were mentioning London, and maybe on the 6th of October, pretty quick now.
Absolutely, they do. That's correct. First week in October, the Vikes will be in London. So early morning, 8:30 kickoff here in Minnesota for that one. Dave Cook, I'm glad that Dave Hoops just mentioned Brazil because I did want to talk to you specifically about that as well. Because one of the things is I watched the second half last night after getting home from high school football that I got a kick out of is you and I take great pride in being public address announcers, in addition to radio hosts, game coverage guys, what have you. But I was loving, I know a little bit of Spanish, and, in Brazil, there could have been obviously Portuguese mixed in a lot too. But I was enjoying hearing the public address because I didn't understand Barkley, didn't understand Hurts. It was fun. And then the stadium music, which I know you bring your own when you announce, that kind of stuff in Brazil, I was getting into.
Yeah, no, they know how to put on an event. That's for sure. Their soccer team and the environment around their soccer team is legendary, right? So that part was fun. I've told you, I don't know, 100 times that I think the next football team the NFL brings in should be Mexico City because it's in the time zone. It's not that far south. Well, Brazil is pretty close to the regular time zones, right? But that is a haul. So the fact that the game is being played at the same time, the teams that have to go that far, like that's too much. But I still think that Mexico City would be a good spot. I don't mind the international games at all.
I think it's kind of neat, but I want to give a lot of time to you, Dave Cook, because last week when we did Dave Hoops football preview, we kind of shorted your questions, and you were raving about what you've got today, the whole car ride in. So the floor is yours.
All right. I think there's a couple good questions in here for you, Dave. I'm going to start with the lightweight one that might be more fun, and that is just had some ice cream over the week, and we had all kinds of different stuff for it and on it. Gentlemen, what's the best ice cream topper?
Topper. Ooh. I don't get there very often, but the DQ hard cherry dip.
That's a good one.
Butterscotch. Yeah, they have butterscotch, chocolate, all that, but I always go cherry, and just crunching on that is really great. I don't know if you can probably do that at home some way, but if at home, I would probably go with the classic butterscotch. I do like that, from the jar.
That's a pretty good take. I know with your cherry dipped cone theory, my wife is smiling ear to ear because that's almost her lone reason to go to Dairy Queen whenever we can. I told you, Dave Cook, because this was one that you made me privy to because we're going to bump out with an ice cream related song as well. So I thought this question was coming at the end, but this is the one. It was,
but I want to spend some time on the next one.
But this is the one I knew in advance. And I said, I don't top my ice cream too often. I do it more with frozen yogurt, but I do like chocolate chips on just about anything. And I also like the little cheesecake squares, the little cheesecake crumbles that you can put on there. But I like what Dave Hoop said as well, so I'll take any of those.
Yeah, this. I could have put the heading on this called the Chili Billy question, right? Because they have all those toppings.
And then we would have hit them up to sponsor.
Absolutely. Well, we still could because I'm an ice cream guy.
Right? Me too.
But so when I think about it, the young me is grabbing inside and saying, "Hey, it's magic shell." It's always magic shell because when you pour that on the ice cream, it gets hard just like the cherry stuff, right? But that's the one you can get at home. But for me, it's peanut butter.
Really?
Peanut butter and something else. So I don't really care what it is, but peanut butter and chocolate or peanut butter and marshmallow. But peanut butter and ice cream for me is perfect.
See, I've never topped it with that, but I've had that flavor of ice cream. I live in Lakeside, and I don't know if our listeners know this, but Lakeside of Duluth has suddenly become an ice cream mecca between the Scoop on 47th opening this summer and then Crank and Dasher now just a couple blocks away. And I've had salted peanut butter brownie a couple of times, and that's to die for, as they say.
For me, the one that's overdone is brownie. Like, there's brownie everything.
Sure.
So, anyways, so that's, I think that was pretty good.
And now I'm hungry, but go ahead.
Here's the question of the day. Gentlemen, I was reading whatever magazine it was. God, I can't remember the name of it.
He's a very attentive reader, folks.
Doesn't matter.
It was Field and Stream.
We are very close to cloning a woolly mammoth, where they figure that by 2028 we will have a woolly mammoth clone in place because they've got the genome sequence almost done and all that. And then a couple weeks ago in Russia, they found a fully mummified woolly rhinoceros. I mean, from skin to bones to horns, the whole thing, right? And so the scientific community is like, oh my gosh, we could do this too. Gentlemen, the question is, just because you can, is it a good idea to bring back extinct species?
Wow.
Told you this was a good one.
I don't know if I call it good. I'm worried about folks that just tuned in and went, wait a minute, this is a sports show? Go ahead, Dave.
Popular Mechanics, that's the name of the magazine I was reading.
That's a pretty huge question, Dave. I think it would be cool to have woolly mammoths that we could, not look at and put in zoos. I think they could be, trained to work with us as humans, and maybe in really cold climates they could act like cattle. They could pull things. They could move large things, stuff like that. I think it's an interesting idea, and I worry about the ramifications on the bigger picture. Is it a good idea? I'm going to go with an interesting idea. I'm going to punt a little bit. How about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good answer.
I'm going to punt as well, because at least then in this topic, there are two sports terms used. I'm going to say no, it's not a good idea just because you can, that you should. I'm going to say no, because I think that tracks for a lot of things going on in today's society as well. I think with the amount of things that AI can do, it's cool, but just because we can doesn't necessarily mean we should. I look at Dave Cook, you and I both work in job placement as a day job, and I worry about the amount of things that we can do taking over for jobs that humans should be doing. And I worry about the whole thing. I know that doesn't relate to cloning, but it's just all on the same shelf for me. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the most interesting argument in the article was that its impact on global warming, because some people are super excited that it can carry seeds and whatever all over, and then other people are worried about excrement and how that pollutes as well. And so it's such a fascinating should we or shouldn't we just because we can, because it's almost every step of this cloning, right? All right, so the last one, speaking of cloning, we've talked a little bit about the North all week. So here's my question, guys. I want to ask you, sport by sport, which North division is the best? So here we go. In the NFL, the North is Minnesota, Green Bay, the Lions, and the Bears. In the NBA, it is Minnesota, the Jazz, the Nuggets, the Blazers, and the Thunder. In Major League Baseball, it's called the Central, but it used to be the North. It's Minnesota, Cleveland, Kansas City, the Tigers, and the White Sox. And in the NHL, it is Chicago, Colorado, Dallas, Nashville, which strikes me as a weird place to be from in the North, but then also the Wild. So, guys, which one of the northern conferences in sport is the best?
I think this is easy, and I think it bodes well for the time of year, but I will defer to Dave Hoops first.
I like that question, Dave. It's fun. I'm going NHL. I enjoy it the most, followed by the NFL. But yeah, I don't know if we have the best divisions in general. And like you just broke down, is Nashville, should they be there and stuff like that? But I'm going to rank those 1, 2.
So I'm going to go with the NFL number 1 with a bullet, and I think the others are pretty far behind. The second one, I would probably take Major League Baseball. But when I look at, the rivalries, they just aren't there. The question's been around forever. Who's the Twins' biggest rival? And I don't think anybody knows. We want to say it's Cleveland because they've been top tier in the standings in recent years, but there's not much of a rivalry there. You want to make it the White Sox because of a decade ago, but the White Sox' biggest rival played in the Little League World Series, I'm guessing, this year. And then the other ones, you look at the NHL, you look at the NBA, and you go, who has never seen a map before? Because the NBA division is a joke. I mean, I appreciate those teams, but how much geographical distance are we looking at?
Yeah.
You want to make the Timberwolves division fun. You play them with the same teams that are in the other leagues. You play against the Bulls. You play against the Bucks. Maybe you throw the Cavs in there. You could do so much better with this. And the NHL, the way it's set up, I don't feel like the divisions matter, but that's a different Pandora's box. We barely think they matter in any sport.
I agree. See, I think the basketball one is the best because of because of the teams that are in it. Because you've got,
but it doesn't. But you mentioned the North. It doesn't get very. Utah's not North.
I agree with that.
I mean, it
but
is.
I think that set of teams makes that division the best part of you know what I mean.
I guess if I go by overall team quality, my answers would probably change. I go by geography, rivalry, and what makes that division fun.
Yep.
Basketball doesn't do that for me.
No, I think it's basketball, and then I followed up with football because of the historic rivalries there too. So, all right, gentlemen, how's that?
That was pretty good.
Yeah,
that's all I got. I don't know about that cloning question. I got a little bit lost.
I think the cloning thing is so interesting because now that the scientists have the information and that they need, the genetic information, that I think this is going to be company thinks they can make additional money selling more stocks. This is what we can do. Let's get it done. And they're going to bring back some stuff if they can.
See, I just kind of figured that Dave was preparing us for Tuesday's presidential debate by starting with a controversial topic, and then it just became a bunch of word salad, and you have to figure out if anybody actually gave a good answer or not.
No, I did not yell at you.
And that'll be very interesting come Tuesday, but there is no debating that Hoops Brewing is the place to be for good beer. Blueberry Wheats, that's going to be my reason today because it's brand new, but Dave Hoops, as we always do, we close your segment with tell everybody the best reasons to come to the brewery, because I'll tell you this, I'm going to be there today, but I'm certainly going to be there Wednesday because bingo is back again.
Yeah, thank you. So it's exciting because it's not just the blueberry beer. Next week we're going to be releasing our Oktoberfest, which is the traditional Wiesen beer, which is more of a light, dark yellow lager, which is really, really tremendous, and it's been aging for a long time. And then right after that, on the heels, we do our apple ale with our fall fruit. So that's great. And then you mentioned bingo. We have trivia on Monday, cribbage on Tuesday, and now Thursday we have running club, vinyl night, and the Duluth Board Alliance. If you want to play board games, you can go down there. Today, come on down. Sports Central is a bunch of good games. Michigan, Texas is kicking off really soon. Tonight, and we'll have the Gophers on. Tonight, we'll have Oregon on. We'll have that Colorado-Nebraska game. We'll have the U.S. Open. Come one, come all. It's going to be a nice weekend. Stay warm. I want it to stay warm. I know you guys are in shorts, so I'm pulling for it.
There you go. We're always pulling for you. And you mentioned the U.S. Open. I should mention real quick as we're bumping you out, we get to pull for an American male in a final. That's been a while.
And American female as well. So
right.
It's going to be tremendous. Neither one of them has ever won, and as you know, 2003 was the last time any American won. Well, male. The U.S. Open.
Right, which is
just year, but yeah, it's going to be great.
Just crazy to think about. Good to have the Stars and Stripes back in a positive way at Flushing Meadow. Always positive when we're with you. Go Vikes tomorrow. Dave Hoops, let's close with this. Vikes Giants, who wins by how much?
Vikes 28, Giants 21.
Another one-score game. Wouldn't be a Vikes game if it wasn't. We appreciate you. Let's talk again in a week.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. That's Dave Hoops, our guy from Hoops Brewing. Headed there this afternoon to sample the blueberry wheat. It's a good week for NFL football. It's a good week for fantasy football. It's been a long time since I was a student. Can you imagine if fantasy football was a class? We're going to talk about it with the Duluth Denfeld alum. Stick around. We'll be right back. Back on the Northland Sports page. NFL is here. Great game Thursday. Great game last night. Chiefs over Ravens. Eagles over Packers. And, of course, it all starts for the Vikes tomorrow. We will talk a lot of football for the remainder of the show. Coming up in hour number 2, Tatum Everett of the Vikings Entertainment Network will kick it off. Vince Glenn will close the show. In the middle, we'll play buy or sell. Right now, we're wrapping up hour number 1, and we're going to do it like it's a fantasy. Sometimes a fantasy from Billy Joel. Dave Cook, you talked about we had fantasy drafts this past weekend. You play plenty of fantasy football. Never got to take a class about it, though.
Right. I think this is one of the most interesting interviews we have all year because everybody who's listening says, oh, my gosh, a fantasy football class teaching me a little bit of math. I would have loved that. So here we go.
And everybody figures, well, it must be an adult course, continuing education kind of thing. No, this is available in middle school if you're in the state of Florida. And believe it or not, it has a Duluth connection to it. I'm going to bring in one of my closest friends and a joy to talk to every time I get to do this. Duluth Denfeld love Jon Trebesch is with us now. And Jon Trebesch, I love talking to you. Not often we get to do it publicly, but good morning and thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So I kind of let the cat out of the bag already, but tell us what this is, because it's not the first time that you've had the honor of teaching this class, and kind of spell it out for us. You've got some students of basically middle schoolish age that are taking a fantasy football course with you. Enlighten us.
Yeah, so our school kind of gives us a unique opportunity where we get to do kind of like electives that are built around our passion. So I was like, what would I want to do as a 7th grader? And I'm like, oh, what better thing to do than fantasy football? So I created the class a couple of years ago. It went well year one. Last year, they didn't offer it again. This year, we have all these, kind of rotations. They didn't offer it again, but on the elective sheet, students wrote in, like there was like 20 kids that wrote in fantasy football, even though it wasn't offered. So it's been brought back for this year.
That is fantastic. So a passion, certainly, but I guess my question is, and I'm not playing devil's advocate too hard here, but my question is, how are you able to pass this off as education? Is it the mathematics of it? Because there's plenty of number crunching. Is it camaraderie? Because if you've got teams that are partners, you've got to learn to work together. How does this become educational for the students?
I think a lot of it is any kind of learning. You've got to have that like spirit, and people got to get excited about things. And this class definitely does that. This year we're doing things a little bit differently. We had 14 kids in the class, so everyone is going to manage their own team. We start school in August, so students got to create their own franchises to begin the class, create their own franchise, create their own logo. A couple of my favorites this year, you had the Flint Viking Chipmunks with
nice.
A cool logo with a chipmunk with literally a Viking helmet on it. I really like that one. The other one I really like was the Charlton Beach Beavers, which is like a beaver hanging out on a towel on the beach, and those are some pretty cool ones. But typically what the class really does, we just got done with the draft, so there's a lot of buzz. There's always some fun moments in the draft. Probably the most entertaining one was we drafted on a platform that doesn't have everything up to date, and there was a student in the mid rounds. He was like, oh, I really need a wide receiver. A bunch of rookies just win. He goes, oh, I know I should pick this veteran, but wait, I'm gonna randomly pick a receiver. And then he picked someone who didn't get drafted and was like still in college. So obviously there was a big roar, and everyone gave him a hard time. But that was actually the student, Brian, that when you had the opportunity to come and be our expert, he was the one that made that huge cheat sheet.
Oh, nice. I did see that.
Right. So you get to have those sorts of fun. And there's a lot of buzz going right now because we had class on Friday. They have to submit their lineups and, those first Thursday night games. That was pretty fun. And then typically weekly, what happens is Monday, we come in, the games have all been played. I put on the highlights for the week, and then students get to hand score all of the stats for that week. And then also later in the week, they do what's called an owner's report, and there's a different data supplement, like they might do box and whisker plots or bar graphs or things based on the stats of their team individually. So that's how we build in the math. And then obviously there's the camaraderie with trading and trying to pick up guys and doing all the actual, fantasy football things, but try to run it as close to normal as you would in a fantasy league, but put a little extra educational spin on it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'll tell you this, Dave Cook, I feel the pressure. Jon let the cat out of the bag as we're chatting with Duluth Denfeld alum Jon Trebesch. With a Denfeld alum like Jon, it's been decades that we've been friends, but he considers me the expert for the class. Guys in my fantasy league are going, what kind of expert are you? You've never won a thing.
Yeah, where's Ryan Arolos flexing a little
Eric
bit?
Eric Lofalt should be your next go-to. He's won our league twice, Jon, but Dave, go ahead.
So I think the fascinating part of this is making math usable for kids and not just page 45, do the odds, we'll see you tomorrow.
Right.
I have a student that I've been working with who is going to college now, and it was going to be a struggle until he got into some of his classes. And one of the classes was put a ladder up to the second floor. Understand you're going to bring down a 120-pound person. What angle does a ladder need to be at? Well, he hated math, but he said, wait, now, I have to do this for real? And he has learned how to do angles based on, just information. And he called me to say, boy, math is fun when you have to do it for your livelihood. Not so much fun when you have to sit there in class. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I was going to ask about too, Jon, because I loved math, but like Dave was saying, I don't know that I loved just doing a bunch of problems. I still love math as a sportscaster that leans on stats. Are you seeing the excitement to be involved in the class? Now, I know week 1 is basically most of it being played just tomorrow, but how have you seen the excitement towards that educational piece?
Yeah, I think just like the fact that it wasn't even offered as a class and you had like 25 kids that signed up for it, right? So obviously there was a lot of buzz and interest. And like I think this is a great opportunity for me as I'm also a math teacher, right? And one of the things that the curriculum, you really don't get a lot of that data and stats in as much as you would like because those other things kind of take the forefront. And so this is a great way to like supplement some of those things. Kids are learning. They don't think of it as learning because they're just looking at, oh, cool, what's the percentage of points that Justin Jefferson got on my team this week? Or, you know, those sorts of things. And they're just doing it football related and they want to be in the class. They really enjoy it. So they're, as Dave kind of said, they're learning without realizing they're learning, which is always a tough skill.
I was going to say that's kind of the fun part for educators, certainly. John, I want to ask you this because you're a big-time sports fan. I'm a big-time sports fan. You told the class about our quote-unquote rivalry in high school, you being at Denfeld, me being at East. You let me speak to the class. You let me give my advice. There's got to be people in the fantasy world that you like. What'd you think of some of the things I said? Were you going, I'm going to draft exactly the opposite of what he said, or were we on the same page with a lot of things?
No, I think we're on the same page because I think the big thing this year is like huge wide receiver. Unless you can get one of those top 2 running backs, it's wide receiver heavy, you know, as we go along. And we've seen in the first, you know, you had Barkley go crazy and he was one of those top guys. And then all the wide receivers, every game there's been a guy that's gone, you know, a lot of points. So that was kind of your thing, is look at the wide receivers. And I thought the really good advice you had is if you're between 2 guys, look at the quarterback. Who's got the better quarterback? Because that will also help inflate those stats a little bit.
100%. But speaking of your big sports following, I love talking about fantasy football as a course, but I want to talk about a trip you took earlier this summer, because Dave and I love when friends of our show get to kind of intertwine. And you and I, like I said, have been friends for decades, but getting texts from you as you went to Cooperstown for the Maurer induction, I almost said introduction, but everybody had been introduced to him quite a long time ago. We were honoring that Hall of Fame level career. But then you got the chance to speak to Lavelle Neal, appeared in one of his columns being interviewed, got a chance to meet Gardy. I got to say, you were having the trip that I would have dreamed of. Take us down that road, if you will.
Yeah, so as soon as Maurer got kind of announced as being an induction candidate, it's always been on the dream to go to Cooperstown. Like, well, why not just do it? Because I'm looking at, I can't even identify who the next twin that's going to go into the Hall of Fame is. So I don't know when the next opportunity is going to be. So we planned a trip, went out there, and I would say if you haven't done it, you should. Like, Cooperstown was, all it's tabbed up to be. It was quite amazing. From the fans were great. The people running the event were amazing. The players and families, all those people who got to meet were pretty awesome. And I think the highlights obviously was, the induction ceremony. I thought, like, as a parent and a coach, you look at those 4 individuals like Beltre, Helton, Jim Leland, and Maurer who went in. They were all great baseball players or great baseball minds, but just as good people. They were great people. Just, you could tell by the interactions with the fans and other ones that they were just like special and people that I would definitely want my kids to admire. So I think that made it even more special. I think our favorite part was there was a small round table that happened the next day after the Hall of Fame induction. So literally you could buy a ticket. I think it was like $10. You were in this little like sports complex baseball field, and there was probably only like 50 people. And they just did like an intimate round table with the 4 inductees, and you got to ask questions, and it was about things they really don't talk about. It was so memorable and so amazing. And, I got to give obviously props to Maurer because, what you see and what you hear from him, it's the same. Like, exactly what you're getting with Joe Maurer. He's a pretty awesome guy, and I really respect his decision because they've kind of changed to an pay for autograph type deal this year. Lately at the Hall of Fame. So all the players like sign up, you pay like $80. You can bring in your one item that you want them to sign. And Maurer's like, nah, I ain't doing that. So he did not even offer the paid autograph thing. We were fortunate after that round table, him and Beltre came and, signed a bunch of things, and my daughter was with us. So my daughter got a ball signed by Maurer, which was, a pretty special moment and proud dad moment, as that excitement that, she runs back right after Joe Maurer gets in the Hall of Fame. She gets that autograph from him. It was pretty special.
That is pretty neat, and kudos to Joe Maurer for his stance on that. I know we have Mauer bias or Minnesota bias, but as you watched the speeches, I know I was texting you too. Were you enamored with the Jim Leyland one as much as I was? I thought that was the best speech of them all.
Yeah, like I was, obviously knowing him mostly from the Tigers in our, competition with the Twins, you're always not the biggest fan of your rival team, but I was super impressed. Like, he was super funny, super down to earth. He talked a lot about in the roundtable about like his son is into coaching and how he kind of guides and helps him along the way. But he's a really good guy, really good baseball mind. And I was, super impressed with his speech for sure. And especially the funny one. I can't remember what it was, but I know he had one little joke in there about his wife that was pretty funny. And I can't recall what it was, but those who watched it, I'm sure that moment stuck out. Yeah,
he was on a pretty good stand-up comedy role there for a while. Sounds like a very memorable Hall of Fame trip. Certainly a Hall of Fame appearance by you, Jon Trebesch, an alum of Duluth Denfeld High School, one of the better basketball standouts. In fact, Louis St. George, I don't know if you know this, Johnny, still refers to the Denfeld gym as the house that Jon Trebesch and Sean Seaman built. So you've got that going for you, which is nice.
That?
Oh, so kind. I'll have to thank Louis next time I see him. That's kind of him.
You will certainly have to do that. Thank you for appearing with us. I'm going to have you close with this. We're doing a lot of predicting already. Vikes record for the year. What do you got?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think it's going to be a struggle. I think we're probably going to finish. Let's go with. I think we'll get 7 wins.
So 7-10 for the Vikes. That's actually not a bad roll. I think that's pretty close to where they might be. Obviously, we're hoping for much better, but when you look at them on paper, I think that's pretty accurate. If the Vikes are that subpar this year, you've always got fantasy football, and you've got kids playing it too. Fun to talk about that class. An absolute blast to speak to the class. I hope we get to keep doing that. Let's talk again soon, my friend. Appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. That is Jon Trebesch. That's one of my favorites. Now, granted, him and I are very close, so it's one of my favorites for a reason. But again, the concept is just really neat.
No, I love the idea, the concept. Jim Leyland, the last manager you ever really saw smoking right on the bench. And that was always, he's the guy with the heater.
I was going to say, Jack McKeon would try it down to the very end, but Jimmy Leyland might be just as known for it, if not more. We're known for talking a lot of football. Hour number 1 is done. In hour number 2, plenty of football. Tatum Everett next, then buy or sell, and then Vince Glenn. Heavy on the purple. Stick around. We'll be right back.